You guys, welcome back to the show. I needed to pull in a heavy hitter today to talk about the Bravo sphere, and I had such a blast talking to her the last time when we talked during Vanderpump Rules season, which feels like it was like a decade ago, but I think it was just a couple of months. I don't know, but there is so much going on in the Bravo universe, and sometimes I don't get to focus as much on that with all the other pop culture stuff happening. So I want this to be a good, down and dirty Bravo conversation with one of the best there is that does it. If you don't know her podcast, go discover her podcast right now. It's like 2 to 3 episodes a week. It's perfect. It's called The Reality Is. She covers everything. And also I was just listening to one of her shows and she heavily covers Atlanta too, which I watch and I will minutely talk about, but I am so flustered with this season. So it'll be great to actually talk a little bit about this. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show, Noor. Noor, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back, Ryan. Can I just bring something up? Because yes, it has been a while since we last talked. And the last time we spoke, Ryan, can you fucking believe it? Okay. Literally the last time so I think I was on your podcast and a week later you were on mine. Yeah. And the following week is when Scandal happened. And on my episode with you, on my podcast, literally the last 15 minutes of the episode I did with you on my podcast, we talked about how Sandoval is not a bad person.
Oh man, okay. Now it's fully coming back to me like a fever dream. But yeah, I was like, why don't people get it, man? Why don't people see? It really, oh man, I called it so wrong. And you called it wrong as well. And listen, we're fallible. We're just podcasters. We're fallible people. We take the information that we receive. And I apologize on a daily basis now for that. I was wrong. I was wrong.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I said that he was maybe handsome. You were like, he's a real deal. Whatever you see on TV is who he really is. He's so genuine. He's not pretending.
Wait. Okay, in my defense, he is still coming off very genuinely stupid. He is he's not hiding the fact that he is completely stupid at this point. In fact, we've seen now every clip that they filmed for season 11, and this guy's acting like he's done nothing. This guy's puffed up chest. You can already tell he's coming in cocky, and I'm like, slow down, bro. I'm still, my head's turning over. I'm still catching up. I know he was used to he's like, I know I've cheated for the last year. I don't care. But we just found out. We're still getting used to the fact that he did this.
I'll be honest with you. I think I'm over it.
I mean, I'm over aspects of it. And yeah, but you know what? It's when you hold somebody on a pedestal and then you're like, oh, you're just an average schmuck. You're just a schmuck.
No, I'm not going to lie. Maybe you did that. I certainly didn't hold him on a pedestal, but I did also say my podcast, I did also say that he blocked me because I said he was the worst in a comment on his Instagram. And so you know what? Always go with your gut. Your gut never.
Because I remember you felt bad about that. You were like, you know what? But in retrospect, you saved what would have been an eventual block anyways. You would have eventually got blocked even if he unblocked you at that moment. Actually, it's so funny. Right before this, I saw that Fox, he filmed that Special Armed Forces season 2. Where it's Fox is doing the mission to Mars with Schwartz, and now they're doing this, and it's him, JoJo Siwa, Tara Reid, Nick Viall. It's a who's who of people looking for work, and I'm like, it just, I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I'm completely over my crush on Tom Sandoval.
Yeah, I'm glad we're on the other side of it now. We and it's okay, Ryan. You have to give grace to yourself, to your past self.
It's so funny because people were still people in the comments, remember when you used to defend him? And I'm like, yes, I remember. Of course I remember. I'm not going to act like I didn't say any of those things. Of course I remember. Okay, well, moving on to Real Housewives of Atlanta this season. And I was listening to your not from last night's episode, but the week before, and you were talking about some thoughts that I was completely in agreement with. And one of the big question marks, or just in terms of, and you were comparing her to Gina almost in a certain ways, was Drew Sidora, Drop It with Drew, which I feel like is did Drop It with Drew get dropped? Like we don't hear about her journey with the weight loss anymore. It's a bigger journey potential of sexual exploration, which we are coming up on. What is your opinion on Drew Sidora this season?
Okay, so Drew Sidora, and this is my opinion on Drew across the board since we met her, which is like, and this is like a very classic housewives thing, is that misogyny is a hell of a drug, especially when you have a piece of shit husband. Like the women with the worst husbands always are just like the most deeply misogynistic ones, right? Like, you see it in Teresa, you just see it time and time again. And like Drew does this thing, which I mentioned on my podcast, which is, don't disrespect my man. Don't disrespect my relationship. Don't my man. But then your man is the one that is going around not just disrespecting other women, but also disrespecting you. So like this week on, last night's episode, what I thought was really quite brilliant. And this is where Drew wins my heart as a person who likes to watch messy women on television. Drew has learned how to deflect from the best. Her husband is a dog shit, or ex-husband now, is a dog shit human being. Drew lies about whether or not she kissed LaToya. And then rather than focusing on the lie, she somehow pivots to Marlo is a snake because she recorded us and sent a text. So the rest of the episode, we get into like, is Manetta a snake? Is Marlo a snake? Something about edges, something about taxes. And I was like, you know what, Drew, your pants are on fire, but nobody can see that because you have managed to deflect. And that is what makes a great housewife. So my long way of saying, Drew Sidora, you get to keep your peach.
I mean, obviously gets to keep her peach, but at the same time, she's trying to bring out like Tamra elements, and she does like it's like learning to use superhero powers and you're fumbling it. She's like doesn't necessarily know how to use it effectively, so it kind of, and of course, like guys, we know Marlo's a snake. You're not giving us any new information about Marlo and that's why when she says that, Marlo's like, okay, yeah, okay, cool. Like it's kind of like that's doing nothing. It's just like brush the dirt off my shoulder when you say that. But the bigger truth, the thing that's fascinating me even more is that why is Drew so holding to this? I mean, listen, I do really like Drew, but it's obviously she made out with LaToya. I don't give a rip, but she did. I mean, like the fact that she's going, and you said this, and I said this on last night's show. I said, listen, you can say a lot of things about Kandi. The one thing you can't say, she is not a liar. Period. If Kandi says it, not a liar.
Kandi has never lied. She has never, ever in her history on this television show or any of the 15,000 shows she's ever been on, has she ever lied. And so I believe Drew. I mean, I believe Kandi. And also, like, there is enough grainy footage. Isn't there a I think because
we heard the audio. Didn't we hear the audio of like, yeah, get it. Like we heard them also cheering each other on.
And wasn't there like a bit of the audio that said something like, oh, you made me a lesbian now, or something like that. And I don't know if it was Portia who said it or Drew who said it, but one of those two said it. And I feel like it wouldn't have been Portia because Portia is known to have hooked up with women. So I feel like it was Drew. And I feel like it's silly. It's like, it's as silly as like what Sheree said, which is you are on a reality television show and you're mad about people recording you.
Yeah. Finally, Sheree makes a great point. Like finally it had to have happened at some point, but it's one of those things which, by the way, I kind of like this though. Like, I'm like, good. This will take us into the last half of the season. At least there's something interesting, but it is one of those common mistakes that I think housewives fall into is that first off, I'm all for sexual exploration, whatever. I don't care at all. But the thing is, if you are going to choose to sexually explore and you are not wanting anybody to know, don't do it when you are actively filming a reality show with cameras, like not even on a weekend off. You are actively having cameras there with all the ladies. Like maybe keep it in your pants if you are that worried, because this is the group. It's like if you've watched Atlanta at all or any of the Housewives show, this is the job. This is how you get the bag.
Yeah. And I think, on that topic, I do have to laugh because I feel like it's hilarious that like Kyle Richards really thought she did something by being like, I'm gonna come out with a divorce storyline and a potential lesbian affair. And then like here's Real Houses of Atlanta being like, yeah, we already showed this on our show 6 months ago, Kyle. Sorry.
Yeah.
Kyle's like, fuck.
Yeah.
Poor
and,
Googie.
and sadly, Kyle's going to get more attention for her lesbian affair. Sadly, by the way, today, you guys, I woke up to the news that Kyle Richards is now producing and potentially directing a documentary on her new special friend, Morgan Wade, the country singer. And I just love the fact that it's like all of this comes out and Kyle's like, I will legitimize this relationship. So I will make a film so people know that they're even more confused that this is potentially not just hooking up. I'm a filmmaker now and I am supporting her art. I cracked up.
Yeah. Also, like you have far more listeners than I do. None of my listeners has ever told me that they heard any of this Morgan Wade person's music. I'm not a country girly. Have you heard of any of their music?
No, but like I never like listen, this Morgan Wallen, I guess, is like the #1 country star of all time right now. He sells out stadiums. I had never heard a Morgan Wallen song until this past Saturday. And I was like, okay, let's see what this is about. And I did. It's not for me. And I just don't go searching out country music to begin with. But it is so Kyle. Kyle is such a boner for like Casey Musgraves and all of this stuff. So, this was just right up her alley. And for somebody that's like on the verge of potentially more success, just gives her a girl boner so hard. Even if it's not a sexual relationship, it's a very special relationship, which I'm all for. I don't care.
Yeah. She loves to find somebody who's coming up because I think that she sees herself in that person because she's obsessed with her childhood.
Kyle Richards is the new Clive Davis of country music. So what, Atlanta, it's one of those shows and because it's not a blind spot for me. I've watched every episode of Atlanta. It's one of those things that I will never give up on Atlanta. I think you said something similar on your show. I watch it every week. I might watch it a little bit later because sometimes it does feel like work this season. And there are elements that I really enjoy, but overall, I don't know what, in your opinion, why doesn't this season gel? Because all the elements are potentially there.
Because they don't actually like each other at all. It's not even that they don't. Okay, so you have people who don't like Marlo, but it's not just about Marlo being unlikable. It's that Marlo is like, she's not honest in any way. Like she spent months or weeks talking about Candy and blaming Candy and talking like to the point where corny ass cousin Courtney, she said something like, oh, maybe when they're talking about the shooting or the incident at Blaze, she said something like, oh, maybe it's the environment that Candy creates that shootings keep happening. And I was like, are you wanting to be unhoused, Courtney? Like, because Candy Burrs Tucker is going to like have your ass for saying something like that. So like Marlo, it's the problem with Marlo is that she comes in hard for people about nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. Like you're not creating genuine connections and you're not genuinely coming for people about real things. She creates this like unpredictability in the show or in these relationships that isn't enjoyable. Like it's not as unpredictable as like something silly that like Sonia Morgan would do, right? Like it's not as unpredictable and silly as like Sonia's teeth coming out or like, or like Rinna
wearing a diaper in the jitney because she doesn't want to use the bathroom. Yeah.
Yeah. Or Rinna asking if people are doing coke in your bathroom. Like it's not like that. Marlo does it in a much darker way. And then she also gives up on it. Like, so like there's that episode where she's like going to the date or whatever with this Scott Lee gentleman, which is what a name, Scott Lee.
Which by the way, we found out he was an ex-con, but he bought her a lot of roses. He bought her a lot of like, he did all the things, but it was a great journey to watch.
Yeah. So on that date, when she's on her way to that date, she calls Drew because the only reason she calls Drew is because Sonia talks to her and Sonia says, oh, we were at Drew's music video. And so she calls Drew pretending to apologize to her. And when Drew doesn't really accept it, she just hangs up on her and says she has a box body and that like Ralph is looking at her. And I'm like, Marlo, you don't like, she's not carrying through her beefs either. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, she tells Candy in Portugal that Candy needs to do self-care. Fuck off, Marlo. Like, you just accused her of murdering your nephew. Like, what are you talking about? So I feel like there's that problem. And then Sonia, inexplicably.
Poor Sonia.
Like, you have just hitched your wagon or your horse to the wagon. It's wrong. Okay. It's not working out for you, Sonia. And I don't know why she keeps trying to make Marlo happen. Like, I don't know.
Because Marlo showed up to her Fabletics shoot, and a lot of the other ladies did last season. True. That's why, because they feel like, well, it is interesting because it's all about relationships and dynamics and who shows up for who and who's in, and that dynamic is fascinating. But you make that great point of they don't. Like I was comparing it to Real Housewives of New York. So we're in this kind of nice environment right now where we're only going to get this one time because it's before podcasts, it's before Twitter, it's before like we're getting all of these ladies getting to know each other without our opinions being thrown into the mix. And we'll only have that time once. So I'm leaning in closer trying to get to know these ladies. But the Atlanta ladies all fucking know each other so much and their beefs are so ingrained that it doesn't really encourage us to get to know, like even Drew, who I think is a successful new addition, we still, our affinity is so tied in with the older, with the OGs in a certain way. I mean, even with Nene and Carlos King, so much conversation just about that. But Marlo is such a great, I loved her as a friend obviously, but she's not a reliable narrator. We talk about that concept on this show all the time. It's like fighting with Teresa. If you fight with Teresa on Jersey, it's a losing battle because she doesn't play by the same rules. Her mind doesn't work the same way. So you're never going to get an honest conversation. So it's pointless. It's entertaining. It's like a fun little taste of something, but you're never going to be able to hang your hat on a storyline involving some truth with Marlo.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not going to lie, even though we're like trashing Marlo right now, I do have to say that at the end of this episode, Marlo's not wrong. When she's like, yeah, we were having words. I talk shit about your husband. We can all Google who has what. Like, I think we know now that I don't think Ralph has any money. Like all the shit that.
What happened to Ralph's book about being a good stepdad? Like how narcissistic do you have to be to go, this relationship that is very special, potentially, I'm going to try to make a book out of it while I'm on Real Housewives of Atlanta. That's wild.
And also then, did you see recently he's selling aprons?
I don't doubt this guy is going to be grasping at anything before this gravy train. Well, not that it's a great gravy train, but it's like Tom Sandoval writing a book about how to long-term relationships. It's like there's no reason for it. And it just shows you sometimes, myself included, how our egos can be so overly inflated and we grasp at anything for any kind of spotlight. And especially because this is, for all, should be her spotlight. This is Drew's spotlight. This is her time. And she's not only having to fight with these women, she's also having to fight in this relationship that she's weirdly protecting, even though he's never protected her once.
He sucks. He actually gives me, and I can say this as a person from New Jersey, he just gives me big, like creepy guy from New Jersey vibes, which is where he's from. He's from New Jersey. Ralph, he reminds me of he's got like a Joe Gorga energy also about him, which is again, like deeply embedded in misogyny too. Like he comes in, he's like, oh, me, us boys, we're going to cook and you ladies be fighting. Like, fuck off, Ralph.
How do all Jersey men have the same body? They all what is going on? Like they all have the same ripped body. I don't want to even guess what it is, but it's all the same literal body. It's wild.
It's like these short guys with
just ripped, really just vein, just ripped in a way that you would never have been in the 70s. Like just ripped.
It's like the New Jersey flavor of steroids. It's like our steroids have pork roll in it, or
it's so funny. I rewatched that christening episode a couple months ago from Jersey, the christening, and Joey Gorga, in there he has hair, he's in shape, but somewhere along that line, Joey got a real different workout plan, and all of a sudden just was like, bro. I mean, that just doesn't happen, you guys. Like I've worked out with trainers. I've worked out hard. I've never, in fact, I one time went to my trainer of like, yo, dude, should I take steroids? Like he was like, fuck you, dude. Like, no, but I was like, there's no way you can get that kind of Jersey body without like, come on.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's like implants in there. Like, don't you feel like, I don't know, there's got to be like a pec implant or like, you know, they went in for abs, but they just got like a big like hard pack added to their stomachs. And I can say this because I see this all over the Jersey Shore all the time, all summer long and in the winter.
I want to pop up video on these shows where it tells us what work they've done. Like, fun fact, Joey got ab implants during this season. It was like when Vicky Gunvalson came back from OC and her facelift hadn't healed yet, and everybody was like, what the fuck's going on? And then as the season went on, her face settled like an old house, and it was like, okay, that looks normal again.
And now I forget that we were ever horrified by Vicky's face. I'm like, yeah, that's been Vicky's face this whole time.
Dude, that was before I even knew what a podcast was. I remember watching that season and just being as shocked as the other ladies when she showed up to the beach, I think it was. And everybody was like, what the hell?
I'll tell you where she came to. She came to Heather Dubrow's crab boil. Or like clam bake or something. It was like an East Coast clam bake.
See, that's the pop-up video I want to know is Heather Dubrow what she spends every episode. Her spending budget every episode is like, Heather made this during this episode, but she spent this. She would be totally in the red.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, speaking of faces not settling, did you see Sheree's like confessional look that looks crazy?
Yeah, well, that was a thing. And then she said she's only ever done natural things to her. Like, it was like, no. And so I was like, wow, that's wild. And you should let us know so we can stay away from whatever happened. And well, because like things do take time to like settle and all of this stuff, but like it's like Kylie Jenner every season of Kardashians. She now reveals one more thing that she did. She was like, I also got my boobs done. And she's like, great. We knew that from the jump, but it's great 8 years later that you're letting us finally, you're admitting to it.
Yeah. Thanks, Captain Obvious. It's so funny. I love that Sheree keeps being like, I came here for zen and tranquility and it will help me with my fibroids. I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Who said that?
Portugal is the number one place to combat fibroids. So that is,
like there's like people go to Turkey for like hair plugs.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I actually do that.
That's what they go to Portugal for. It's for sound baths.
Because Candy is one of the people that legitimately, I would argue, she doesn't need to be there in terms of, she's got 8 different jobs. Most of them work, like she was like nominated for a Tony, for the love of God. Like, the fact that I would hide in the bathroom too, if this was happening to me, like, cause it's almost at a certain point of like, come on guys, like I'm producing Broadway shows now. I don't know if I necessarily have, like, it's like you can see the exhaustion sometimes that she, like that one scene from a couple episodes ago when her and Sheree met and Sheree came in like a fur coat. They were going on a walk. and Candy was just like in sweat. Candy was like, oh, okay, you're going for a coat on the walk. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And if I was Candy Burris Tucker, I was nominated for a fucking Tony and I had to share time with Ralph's fake cousin Courtney, I would also be like, you know what, my butt's leaking and I have to go home.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what, by the way, that would be a great episode if we did see somebody's BBL implode, like that Titanic submarine, rest in peace, but like, just it implodes and it's whole, it's like it's still we lost Sheree's ass somewhere along season 8. Wait, but then they show the previews for the upcoming episods, and I love how they end next week's of like Cynthia Bailey walks in, and I'm like, okay, like I like Cynthia, but it's like Nene on Carlos King saying like Cynthia was behind my back, and I'm like, I would love to believe you, Nene, but like Nene has in her head that everybody's like her, and Nene's so unique, but it's like Cynthia, like we like Cynthia, but she's not. Do you know what I'm saying? Am I mistaken to not think Cynthia's a complete snake like Nene would make her out to be?
Okay, I don't believe I love I love Nene Leakes. I think that she
Yes.
is on the Mount Rushmore of housewives. She's created this entire thing. Like I feel like Bravo owes that her so much, but I officially don't believe every single thing that comes out of Nene's mouth. And I also like just I know this sounds fucked up, but like I also don't care anymore. Like I don't care because nothing she's saying is necessarily exciting or new. You're like you're not coming to me with new information. And also I try to listen to that Carlos King podcast. And
I listened to clips. I listened to
yeah.
clips and
No, I went on his podcast and I was like, I'm going to listen to this. And I had to turn it off because I didn't realize that he just shouts the whole time. Like, I don't know if that she was just like excitable because he was talking to Nene, but like, I was like, I can't listen. And I'm not like, my podcast has audio issues too, but like, sir, you are Carlos fucking King. Like, why are you shouting like all the time? But Nene is anymore. And I think Nene is so upset and she's going through something I like to call, which is a private experience, which is where like you think everything in the world is happening to you because people hate you, people are talking about you, but it's like, it's not about you. Did you watch Oppenheimer, by the way?
of course, yeah.
It's like Strauss had a private experience. He thought that like, spoiler alert,
Yeah, guys.
Albert Einstein.
Guys, everybody knows Strauss, played by Robert Downey Jr. in the movie. We actually talked about this on Monday's episode because my dad got out of that movie and he was like, "Which one was Robert Downey Jr.?" I was like, and then I was like, how amazing is that? Like, I just assume everybody knows everything, and then I'm like, it's the one that fucking looked like Robert Downey Jr. and sounded like she's like he had a little bit of a balding happen. I was like, the fucking guy that looked like Robert Downey Jr. Like, he was like, I knew Matt Damon. I knew that wasn't Robert Downey Jr. I'm like, oh, you thought Matt Damon might be Robert Downey Jr.? And I was like, what is going on? That I was like, so you went through that movie going, you were that into the performance where you didn't even realize it was Robert Downey Jr.
He thought Robert Downey Jr. played the president.
I was just like, but I was like, what a unique way. Like, I was like, I would love to go into a movie where I didn't realize this person was that. It's never happened to me.
Literally never happened. But you know, in that movie, like Strauss has a private experience that Albert Einstein and Oppenheimer are talking about him. Like, I think Nene has that feeling about every single person. And also, by the way, having a private experience is a key component of being a housewife where you think everybody is out to get you. Very important, right?
It makes you great. It makes you a legend, but it's painful personally to deal with, I'm sure.
Exactly. And it's painful when you become so angry and like you build a wall up, right? It's like Nene's doing like, it's like she's the other extreme of what Bethany is doing, where like Bethany thinks everything is about her and she won't shut the fuck up about it. Nene thinks everything is about her and she's like put up this like stone wall and is like, fuck everyone, and I'm not dealing with anybody and like screw everybody, but also I will occasionally drop in and like, you know, get my name in a headline or whatever.
And
like
try to fuck up existing shit.
Yeah,
I think, you know, like remember, no matter like, oh, Atlanta fell off. And it's like, yeah, these shows, my whole thing is that nobody is bigger than these shows or they shouldn't be. And when you get to be bigger than the show, it is potentially time to push off. And by the way, even watching those clips with Nene, my overall thought was, man, I love watching Nene. Like, I love watching Nene.
Yes.
Like, I really enjoy, even if I don't agree with her, even if I think it's so off base, I still sit there and go, what a unique person to like, this is really truly what made these shows great. But I am not ignorant to the fact that I know there are millions of ladies that are not as good as Nene, but there's probably some people out there undiscovered that are going to be brilliant that we are yet to have discovered on these shows.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm, you know, I wish her the best. It seems like her children are doing not great.
That's what I'm saying. Private experience, like the trauma of losing Greg, you know, her son was just in the news. There's real things happening in her life. And it is that interesting point you say of like that something that makes you great of thinking everybody still has their name in your mouth. And in a sense we do, but most of the time when I see Nene's name, it's a celebration of how good she is, like what she meant to these shows. You said something interesting about, well, you know, and Bravo owes her so much. What do you think Bravo owes people like Nene, people like Bethany, mainly Nene though? What is Bravo's responsibility? Is it like the NFL where these people are getting like CT from head injuries and we need to take care of them for the rest of their lives? What does Bravo owe Nene?
No, I don't think Bravo owes Nene anything financially, to be honest. Like, I think that you did your part. You were on a television show, and it's not like she didn't get anything out of it. She was on fucking Glee. Like, she was on Broadway. And this woman was a stripper in Georgia. Like, she has an incredible story. She was on The Apprentice. Like, she had Donald Trump checks, right?
Yeah,
like
she was close to being the vice president of the United States. That's how no, but like, yeah, because there was nobody. That's what's the cool thing about Housewives is that this created a new genre, and she took it. I mean, she was one of the people that took it as not as far as it could go, but one of the people that did it. Like when she was, Ryan Murphy was using her again and again, which, by the way, fun story that I don't think I've said on this show. She went to the acting studio that I worked at for a long time. And I remember I had to call her because her credit card didn't go through. Ooh. And I had to be on the other end of Nene going, "What do you mean my credit card didn't go through? Are you kidding me?" And I know Nene, and I can't be like, "Oh my God, I'm getting like," and I was like, I said, "Nene, I know it's our mistake. I know. I just need to, but it was one of those calls where I knew how it was going to go already because I'd watched the show, but it was like, unfortunately, my job. And this was during the Ryan Murphy stuff. And I was just like, oh, this is so funny.
Yeah, I mean, I think that she's incredible at it, and I think that I don't think that Bravo needs to do anything and I don't think any network does, right? Like, unless they were still I don't know. I don't. Yeah, I know Bethany's trying to do this thing.
So you're saying you do not support Bethany Frankel's reality union? Is that what you're saying? By the way, Noor, can we start a podcasters union today?
Oh my God,
we should start a podcasters union and have.
Yes.
Would you let Bethany be the head of that?
No, I would not let Bethany be the head of anything because this woman is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs officially. Like, somebody take her mic. Guys, she has no friends. She's that video of her eating.
It's okay to it haunts me just with the grease all over her face. And she goes, 1 potato, 2 potato, 1 corn, 2 corn, 3 potato, 4. I'm like, what the are we watching somebody stroke out? And this was the same week as she was trying to start a reality show union. And I just kept thinking like, oh yeah, this is our union leader, Bethany. Sorry, she has like corn giblets all over her mouth while she's trying to argue for better wages.
Yeah, also, like, in your argument for better wages, like, your champion is Raquel Leviss.
girl, they gotta pay you. But also, that's such a horrible argument because what you're saying though is if you do something so egregious that immediately gets ratings, she should get more. So by that argument, you're saying the people that don't provide those kind of really gangbuster season moments, they should get less? Like, what are you saying? Yeah. So you're not saying equal for all. You're saying Raquel deserves more than other people.
Yeah, she's trying to create like a shitty. It's like it's like a merit-based system, but like the merit is when you're bad. Like the more tables you flip, it's like you get bonuses. Like I think like NFL players do, right? Like the more games they win, and like
if they get to the Super Bowl, they get more for that.
Exactly. So it's like that. It's like if you make this season so good that Andy gives you a 4-part reunion, then you all get bonuses. Like that's what Bethany's saying, which is again not equal for all. That is not. She is not creating a union. She's creating like a bonus structure. And by the way, like Bethany is well known to be a terrible boss. She doesn't pay people well. She treats her employees like shit. So for her to be like coming out here being like, I had an idea while eating a crab boil bag. I have thoughts. Let me get on. Like, what was she on? Like, that's what she was on. But the clips were going around everywhere. And I was like, who asked? Who asked you?
No,
Bethany.
And Well, I mean, like, listen, I feel like she opens up TikTok or whatever, sees the most popular thing that day, and then she rants about it, which is essentially, in a way, sometimes what I do. But the difference is she wants to make herself the head of whatever that is. If it's about Harry and
That's right.
Meghan, I want to be the person that you know to talk about Harry and Meghan. If it's caviar, if it's dollar store face masks, I want to be like, she wants it all. And I think that's different than girl bossing. Like, I think that's just sucking up all the oxygen in the room, whether you're a man or a woman.
Yeah. She's not girl bossing. She's just like, she's like trend chasing, but like late. She's like a face. You know what she is? She is the physical embodiment of like a TikTok that goes viral on TikTok, then gets on Instagram, and then 4 months later goes viral on Facebook. Like, that's what she is.
Yes. And then, I mean, and by the way, sometimes to great success, because a lot of people that will, by the time it hits Bethany, still people don't know about it. So they think like, wow, she's really at the forefront of these trends. She's really great. And it's like, we've already been in the muck and the mire of all these conversations for months. So that's why it's so funny. And by the way, that just shows you how some of us are so chronically online that it is funny. By the time it gets to Bethany, I've already had that conversation in my head, and I've listened to so many people go back and forth about it, and very astutely. Like, her conversation is just a melding of everybody else's opinions, I feel.
Yeah, also just like her getting that boil bag, that's so offensive. Like, I just was really upset because our friend of our podcast, Kendrick Tucker,
I love Kendrick,
host of Reality and Comics too, hilariously used to post weekly on his Instagram stories about the boil bag that he used to get. And this is it's like a thing. It's people eat it in the South. They eat it everywhere all the time. It's not like Bethany is discovering seafood. Which, by the way, doesn't she have a seafood allergy?
Yeah, well, that was the thing. And it's so funny, Bethany defenders. It's, guys, like, two things can be true at once. I can appreciate Bethany for what she did for these shows, but I also can say, come on, guys, let's live in reality. It's loony. It's given, like, Kendrick had the boil bag, but Kendrick never sat and like wiped it all over his face and talked to us during a podcast while he was eating it. Like, there's a difference. Like, you know, and maybe Kendrick would do better if he did just shove it all in his face, and maybe everybody would throw around Kendrick's videos of like, look at this man counting potatoes on a camera. Like, it was insane, and it was the same
but you know
week.
what? It's sorry, just to say, Kendrick wouldn't do that because Kendrick has self-respect, and Bethany has no self-respect. She's a person who has zero self-respect, but thinks that she is like, should be respected. Like,
Yes.
like she's Malala. Like, that is what she really thinks of herself, which is like,
by the way, you say that, and you know, I'm not even joking. You know, she was like, when she reads Malala's story, she's like, I've been there, I've been there, and I've done that. And I hope she will consider joining my reality show union, even though she doesn't have a reality show. Yeah. Like, that's the thing. Anyways, and by the way, I can already hear people genuinely get upset when I talk about Bethany. And I'm like, guys, you know, I just want everybody to be on the same page. Like, I mean, what are we loving? I don't know. Anyways, but back to Atlanta. You know, Cynthia's coming. We're getting the Drew Sidora potential relationship as her relationship with Ralph is falling apart. But also what I think is going to be interesting is that we already see how aggressive she is, even in the did you make out with Toya or not? And I find that to be really good reality television when somebody's fighting something that is obviously true, but they're committing to the lie. And that makes for great reality television. And I'm just so curious how Atlanta handles this, and if they're able to stick the landing, because I think it's been so choppy this season.
Yeah, I think if we would just all focus on Drew and her lies, we would be in a much better place. But I think that that's like sometimes where we get lost, because, and maybe that'll happen as we get into the Drew divorce stuff, but like, there's something so absolutely entertaining about how delusional Drew is. Like, I think it's delightful. I think it's so funny. I think her obsession with like standing 10 toes down in her lies is so good. And it's like perfect. Like, you could be like, Drew, you said that the sky was green, and look, the sky is blue. And she'd be like, yeah, but look, if you look at it a certain way, doesn't it look green? And you're like, no, Drew, that's not. And she's like, no, but I'm from Chicago. And in Chicago, sometimes we say that the sky is green. And you're like, no, but nobody does it. She's like, no, but people do. People in my family, they do say that. And I feel like you are dismissing my family. And you're like, what is happening, Drew? That is
Yeah.
perfect. Like, I
Well,
need more of that. I don't need, did Courtney record us or did Manetta record us, or I don't give a shit about that. Let's just cut to the chase. Let's stick the landing with the Drew and Ralph stuff.
well, and my, it's not fun, but it's interesting to always watch somebody with false bravado that is obviously so insecure. Like that is always something, fighting against those two things, because
Yeah.
like back in acting school, they were like, if you have to play a drunk scene, don't show us you're drunk. Show us, like, when you're drunk, you're trying to show people that you're not drunk. Fight against that. And that, we watch her fight against this, like, no, I'm gonna be as big, and like I'm gonna combat Marlo. But you can tell how insecure and sensitive she is. And that's the part I find really interesting about Drew. And I hope that doesn't change as she goes through the seasons, because sometimes these housewife shows, they can turn a person. They can I don't mean sexually, but I mean just turn a person's just turn a person's emotional makeup.
Yeah, totally agree.
What did you say? Right before we came on, you said, "Oh, I got to talk about Bravo's lineup right now and how you were." What were you saying that I thought was kind of interesting?
I just don't understand why we have Atlanta, New York, and Crappy Lake on Sundays, and then we have OC on Wednesday. And the rest of the week, what do we have? Fucking Below Decks?
We got Below Decks on Monday, which I like Below Deck. It's a nice, it's a nice, to me, no stakes usually. And I like, it's one of those easy shows for me. It's meditative in a certain way. But I think what they were trying to do potentially is like one of those NBC Thursday night lineups of like, look at what we have. And yes, I would love it if it was more spread out as well. But what I hate about it, though, is instead of it completely working, everybody's a critic now. Everybody studies ratings. And now they're like, well, look, Atlanta goes at a 0.83. New York is going 0.65. And then Crappy Lake is going 0.35 in ratings. And, you're seeing all of them decrease. And that's why I'm like, guys, if you're not going to show up for these ladies, shut the F up about wanting the old Roni ladies back. Shut up, because you're not. This is a really fun, breezy show that's 21 minutes of your life. And you can't show up. Like, we see it in the ratings. I don't want to ever hear ever again about wanting these old Roni ladies back, even though I think they will be back eventually in some form, but stop it.
Yeah, I think just for like my brain, I need Bravo to put one housewife on an evening at a time. Like, I cannot do a back-to-back housewives evening because I just get tired, like I'm like Marlo. Sometimes the Sunday night lineup drains me. Not in a way because like I enjoy it. I like watching it and everything. And truth be told, I watch it Monday mornings on Peacock without ads over coffee. That's how I wake up.
I love Peacock, and I'm not sponsored by Peacock, but it is so they always, and if you have a never before seen, they usually add it the next day for OC at least. And
Perfect.
It's so much, it's a so much easier viewing experience.
Way easier viewing experience. It's so chill. There's no ads. It's boom, boom, boom. 40 minutes, you're done. Like, I love it. I get my kids breakfast and lunch ready on Monday mornings watching Bravo or Peacock. But I think the lineup, I don't watch Below Deck. So there's Below Deck on Mondays. And then what else is on the rest of the week?
Well, I mean, you had Dancing Queens, you had Top Chef. Those are
Project Runway.
Project Runway, which I'm not watching, but I hear people are really digging. But Project Runway and Top Chef to me are like, sometimes you're like, is that Bravo? Because it's so good. Like, it's respectable. It's respectable. You're like, it's like Candy producing Broadway. It's like a different level. You're like, oh, like these are artists cooking food and stuff. And you could argue that these ladies are artists of, fighting, or artists of conflict. Yes. But it's just a different level when you have experts coming in and judging an actual, like, making a dress and making, like, that's a different thing. So when it goes to that, I always think it's like Smithsonian Bravo. It's like, it's like,
it's like Inside the Actors Studio Bravo. Yes, that's what that is.
Which, by the way, Inside the Actors Studio was the first show Bravo had on air, was Inside the Actors Studio.
Yes. But I think the lineup is like, so basically we got into the lineup is frustrating me because of like my podcasting schedule is like thrown off now, because I'm like, Monday I have to watch all these shows and then I need to figure out when I'm going to record and when I'm going to release stuff. Cause like before it was so easy. It's like Monday you have a show, or Sunday night you have a show. And then like Tuesday usually get a show, like Wednesday's a show, and then Thursday there's so you like get to pace it out. But I feel like 2 back-to-back Housewives on Sunday nights, I find a little bit not stressful. I just find it to be a lot. But I will say Crappy Lake at the end of the night is just, or at the end of it is like chef's kiss. It's like so chill. It's so funny. It's so relaxed. I really, really enjoy it. And I like the new Real Housewives of New York. I'm enjoying the shit out of it. I don't know what people want.
I wanted to talk about that as well. And I mentioned it earlier of just like, we're only going to have this one time, you guys, of getting to know ladies at the beginning of something. And Real Housewives of Salt Lake premiered, but it premiered during the pandemic. And we were so starved. And so we immediately, hopped onto this. And of course you had Jen Shaw, she was throwing everything against the wall. But Roni is almost, it's almost, I compare it to like independent film, like back in the day of like, this is like a talkie. We're like talking, we're getting to know these ladies. You're for like, from episode to episode, I'm like, okay, do I like Brynn? No, I don't think I like Brynn. And that's changing episode to episode, which is exciting for me because I don't have season long grudges yet. Like any of these ladies could step up and just impress the shit out of me or like blow me away or get me upset. Like last night I started to get upset at Brynn. I was like, I'm sorry that Jenna Lyons is getting all the attention, Brynn. I'm starting to get annoyed because you're getting annoyed. I don't know if that's the way to go, but she doesn't even know our reaction. So we get to see the whole season without us being filtered into that.
Yes, absolutely. And now that you said that, I think that might even be the issue with Atlanta is we have seasons upon seasons long beefs with some of these people. And that is the issue is like, it's hard to now watch these shows. It's the same problem in New Jersey. We have seasons and seasons upon seasons of beefs. In Beverly Hills, I feel like we don't have that because somehow they managed to bring up something kind of new, but also ultimately a nothing burger every season in Beverly Hills. But in New York, that's what I love. It's like last week I was like, first episode, I was like, no, Sai's cool. Second episode, I was like, Sai needs to shut the fuck up. This episode, I'm like, I love Sai.
Well, see, I'm still on the Sai, like, because I was talking about the self-loathing I have even being called an influencer or a content creator. So when somebody's like sitting there wearing it like a badge of, like, it's self-loathing from I'm just like, it ain't like, and also I'm not a woman. So like I was talking to Bethany Garcia last week and she was saying, yeah, I used to follow Sai. I knew who she was. I didn't even know who Jenna Lyons was. I shop at Old Navy. So I came in completely cold of any of this stuff. So I was like, I don't know who you are, Sai. Like the fact that you're bragging about content creating, I don't buy women's clothing yet. And I mean like, so I don't know. Like, I just thought this person loves to talk. I'm like, by the way, Sai is eventually going to start. She'll be the first one to start the podcast on the Roni group.
Oh, you think so? I feel like it was going to be Brynn that starts the podcast first.
I think Brynn would do it and she'd get 2 episodes in and call out sick. She would call out sick.
She would. Exactly. Because I think Sai sees money in content creation. So I feel like she's happy to make an extra dollar wherever she can get it because she grew up poor. So like, I will say like
I love hearing that. I love her college experience. That's the stuff that I'm finding fascinating that I sometimes tune out on new seasons of Housewives shows. Like I'm leaning in. That was great to have that little piece of information.
Yeah, and I think it's also important because for years and years and years, right, the critique against Real Housewives of New York was this is not what New York actually looks like. People in New York look different. Women in New York look different, whatever. And now we have these housewives, right, that people are complaining are too young or too aware of the camera or influencers or whatever. But Sai is the story of like the New York dream. Like you grow up this way, you grow up kind of like not knowing where you're going to get your next meal. And there is this like beautiful thing that happens in New York City where you end up fucking making it work. Like, and that her story is really unique and fantastic. Allegedly, she's the wealthiest one.
We still don't know how her husband was able to retire at 50 to watch her kids, to watch their kids.
I'm going to say there was like tech stuff. Like I'm going to say maybe he was like a Bitcoin bro.
I think he worked at Girardi Keese, the law firm, and he made his money in Girardi Keese, and then he got but like it always is fascinating But that's what I'm saying is that like that's what I kind of like of learning to appreciate new characters again without the year-long things that I've built up. Where at this point, if Lisa Rinna came back on and told me this big long sob story about her, I would just tune it out. Like I have so much resentment built up to some of these people. So it's nice to not have this history to pull from.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm loving that every episode we're kind of like diving into that person, a new person. Like last week we learned about like Jenna and her mother and like her childhood and like her mother being on the spectrum and all that kind of stuff. I think the first episode we got like Aaron's family a little bit. So I like that every episode we're kind of diving into one of the housewives and like a little bit of their background. So I'm excited to see every episode. I think
next week is Uba.
Which I'm really excited for because I really enjoy her. Ryan, I want to know what you think of Aaron.
Okay, can I be honest? Is that, and this is, I'm struggling, and I'll just be honest with the audience, and I think I've mentioned this before already, is that I didn't know anything about her. Watched the first episode, kind of liked her. I kind of like somebody that's willing to call somebody, like call the shit out from Brynn. Like, listen, this is offensive. You're out there posting. Like, I like a stupid Instagram fight, but she held her own. I like somebody that's like, and then I got information about a certain political affiliation, and listen, that this is not. It was not presented by the show. Yeah. And it did frustrate me because I found out it was after a certain time in our nation's history. And I got even more frustrated. I'm trying to find
you're being so listen, guys, if you want to know what Ryan's trying to say, go listen to my podcast where I will
listen, she donated 4 times to the Trump campaign after January of 2020. And to me,
she wanted to stop the steal.
To me, that is inexcusable on so many levels. Just by like, I mean, just if you to me, I guess here's the thing. It's like, I would like to know more about it. It's kind of like Sam from Summer House dating Corey Kiefer and then finding out Corey Kiefer supposedly liked anti-trans things on social media. I still want to know what happened. Like, I want to know, like, are we going to talk about this? Like, are we going to ask them what's going on? Because is there a reason? Like, is there an explanation? I'm really curious. And I sometimes feel like I'm not the smartest person in the world to be able to argue political points without having to enter an anger phase for me.
Sure.
And so what I'm seeing is a person that I like. What I'm confused about is this stuff that I find out otherwise, and by the way, I'm not ignorant to the fact that I'm sure a lot of these people on these shows, and we've proved it with Real Housewives of New York, the OG cast, I know a lot of them voted very Republican and voted for Trump. And to me, it's that fight of, well, I don't want everybody to be me. I don't obviously want everybody to be me, but it is interesting when one of the aspects of these shows is the viewer. Like, these shows don't exist without us. And it's even more so than scripted, is that we are the person that's tweeting and talking. These shows depend on this.
Yeah.
So you fall in weird kind of love, or I don't know. What is your opinions on this?
I mean, so here's the thing about Erin, right? Like, I was with you. I was like, oh, she's not bad. And then immediately after the first episode, people were like, she donated to stop the steal. I do think I think what you might, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think one of the things that like you're bringing up, which I think is important, right, is that yes, I'm a person who feels a certain way politically. My entire podcast is about calling out problematic shit on these shows. So maybe I'm selfishly saying this, but you do need sometimes people who are a little bit problematic. I would like to know Erin, I would like to understand Erin's background more and understand how a 33-year-old who was born and raised in New York City, and like,
I think the Israeli connection actually is a big piece of it as well.
Yeah,
I think that actually, if
sure. Yes.
There is a certain connection to what he did, that I do know a lot of people have strong allegiances in terms of that particular element. And I'm curious if it's that with her and her family.
And you know what? If it is, I would like to hear that. And not that I think that these shows need to get political, but I think that it's important because if a woman like Erin, a 33-year-old woman in New York City, can have those, like, can vote for Trump, which is like a big deal. Like, young people in New York City don't. And they're very liberal, and it's surprising when it's like, this isn't Teresa Giudice or fucking Jennifer Aiden in New Jersey. Like, this is a 33-year-old woman in New York. I think she's younger than me. So and for her to have those views, while I disagree with her, I think it's interesting and to understand why and how she can still maintain a pretty great relationship, it seems like, with Sai and with Jenna, who I feel like likely fully, actively, and vocally disagree with her, right? Like, I would love to understand that.
Oh, of course. And what I think is exciting, you mentioned before, is like, we do want to see sometimes these problematic people, but it's so much easier when you can, like, you see Ramona coming from a mile away.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, that's, of course. But with Aaron, I was a little like, wow, that's really not fascinating. It was like, wow, I did not expect that. But it is interesting because we will be going into an election year, and they will be filming season 2 most likely. And I'm curious, and I know, a lot of the Bravo fans are like, I don't want to talk about it, but how will you not talk about it? Even if thinking back to the Carol Radswell moment from the last election, talking about that. So I am curious, and somebody like Jenna, which, do you think Jenna will come back for season 2? Because she's like the one, like, what? I'm shocked that they got her because she's so herself, but you can also tell how she's unapologetically herself. And I love that she is so honest about being nervous around groups of ladies and things like that. But I'm like, damn, what a exposure therapy to try to get over that, to be around all of this.
I think the way that Jenna comes back is if she feels that her story that she's telling is resonating with people, because Jenna said that she started to, like, explore her sexuality in her 40s, right? And, like, we're talking about Drew, we're talking about Kyle, these people.
Dude, story, it's the year of bisexuality.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Yeah.
So I think that that's a really interesting thing to talk about, because this is it's not new to me, because I've heard this quite a bit, right? Of, like, women after a certain point in their lives sort of start to think about, like, well, have I put myself in a box? And is this box actually fulfilling me? And I've achieved everything that I could. I have everything in the world that I could ask for, but I'm still unhappy. Why? And a lot of women I know are exploring their sexuality that way. Like, I've said this on my podcast before, that I call myself a quiet queer because I grew up very conservative. The option of even dating a non-Muslim person was, like, not for me. I knew that I had to marry a South Asian. I knew I had to marry a Muslim. So and I'm very happily married. I just celebrated my 12-year anniversary. I have a wonderful husband and all those things, but
no Jessel here.
No Jessel here. God, I can't wait to talk about her. Okay. But I always say, like, I was boxed in my 20s. I didn't even think of that option. And now in my 30s, and almost I'm turning 38 at the end of next month. Like, I now recognize that, yes, if I had the options and if I was single again, I would probably not just date men. I would likely date mostly women. And so I always say I'm a quiet queer because I've never actually lived anything except a heteronormative life. But so that's why I don't say I'm actually queer, because I've never.
No,
you know what I mean?
See,
but
I love
think
these
conversations. Interesting.
This exactly. I said that, I was like, oh, wow, I love hearing Jenna's story about this. And by the way, I think us men have given good reason for every woman to potentially turn at some point. Like, I'm sometimes mystified. I'm like, how are you still straight? I'll be like, because I'll even do dumb shit and I'll be like, how the fuck are you still straight? Like, this is wild. But I like
it is embarrassing. It is embarrassing to be a man, but it is more embarrassing to be a woman who likes men.
Yes. Well, I like that you're like, women putting themselves in box, eventually potentially liking box. I mean, that's the horrible man. That's the man joke. Sorry. But and it's all about exposure. It's all about learning. Like you said, like, it's all of our, and this is purely by luck, is that in my life, I grew up with my best friend, Dusty, who I was with him on his coming out journey and things. But if I had not been, like, I'm so lucky that and it was very painful for him, and watching him go through all of these things, and he's such a great, great man. And oh God, but like watching that, I grew up in Kansas. I moved to Arizona, and he was my best friend. And if I hadn't have had that, I wouldn't have had half of the taste I have in like music and film, but also more than that, like being able to understand that, well, it's love is love. What you're attracted to is what you're attracted to. And I was able to, like, there was never a, wait a sec, you don't like girl. Like it was, and also it's able, I talk about this all on the show. It's like, I've thought like, hey, could I be with a dude? Like, and I've actually given it thought. Could I? And it's just not in my bag, not in my cards. Like, it's just not, it would be sadly reluctant. I wouldn't be, like it would just, okay. But that's only because I met him. If I hadn't have met him, it would have been through maybe some movies and TV, maybe Will and Grace, but I was so lucky to be able to have that. And a lot of people don't. And that's why I think a lot of fear comes from, is because they don't have firsthand experiences to be able to see that it's just like you. It's just like you and me. It's like
Yeah. And I love that every time the girls in New York talk about like sex and dating and flirting, like they cut to like Jenna being like, well, for women, it's very different.
Yeah, she's like, we all get off when it's our. I'm not just like, God, Jenna. See, this is what I'm saying. How are any women
really
with
selling
men?
it?
How are any women with men? Like, I was literally like, damn, it must be nice to be a woman sometimes. It's a lot of shit. It's a lot of shit. But that on that one thing. But even Jenna, even that little pieces of information, I used to make fun of Jenna. I was like, why is she wearing the V's with her boobs all the time? And then we found out it was because she actually has a degenerative disorder on her skin. I was like, it's so great when you actually are able to fill in those blanks with their stories. And you're like, oh, that's why. That makes sense. What do you think of Jessel?
Oh, God. Okay. I will disclaimer this, that as a South Asian woman, I recognize that I judge my own people the harshest. Okay. I recognize that I'm not being nice. Okay. But I think the problem with Jessel is that Jessel is wildly uncomfortable on this television show. Like, she does not feel like she fits in at all. And I think
I love it. I think that's great. We need that.
I think that she's so awkward and like she doesn't fit in. And so she is just making a damn fool of herself constantly. And I'm like, oh, Jessel, what are you doing? Like, she has a filter of of an auntie, like a South Asian auntie. We just call them aunties. And like, like on Family Karma, you had the aunties. She has that filter because like for her to walk around
which is no filter.
Yeah. For her to walk around Aaron's house and be like, oh, it's so cold. I'm so cold. And then for her to casually be like, Jenna Lyons probably went to her house because her house has an ocean view.
She has such a boner for Jenna Lyons. When Jenna Lyons called her a fashion inferred that she was a fashion victim, that fucking landed. And but what's great, all these shows, I always think of like, oh, if I was on a reality show, what piece of my personality that I'm not aware that I have would be immediately seen by the cameras and everybody. And for Jessel, I think it's really calling out that, like, wow, she's completely unfiltered and not in a Nene Leakes way, in this very kind of complaining, like, ooh, that's like grating potentially. And I think it's going to be a tough season for her potentially.
Yeah, I think that she is realized. I think this is I have this fear. I think people say this about like Heather Dubrow, right? Heather Dubrow, I think last week Emily said Heather is the most unaware about how unaware she is. That's like my biggest fear, because I'm so actively trying to make sure that like I know things and I'm like empathetic and understanding and like considerate, that like I feel like I would be on reality TV and somebody would be like, that bitch is the most inconsiderate fuck I have ever seen in my life. Oh. And I feel like that's what's happening with Jessel. Like Jessel thinks that she's like sweet and innocent and just like foolish and like just sometimes says things that like she doesn't really. And they're like, no, Jessel, you're an asshole.
But I don't understand that. That's what I'm saying, is that we're only going to get this first season once. Like Jessel will know by the end of this season, and she will have some kind of rubber band around her wrist and snap it every time she does something wrong to train her from not doing these things. So it's like we're getting their unfiltered personalities. And by the way, that's why I think Brynn, her unfiltered person, like she's always been celebrated for being the cute girl. I'm gonna bite my lip, and I'm gonna fuck you, and I'm gonna fuck you. And we've seen that so much, and I think that's genuinely who she is because that's who she's always been. But it also, that's another kind of grading archetype that'll be interesting when you see her getting jealous of Jenna, and you know the everybody's jealous of this Jenna because she's so respected and so herself. Like she took off to go to her house. Bryn, you can't compare shitting on Ketch and going to Cafe Cipriani. You cannot compare that to leaving for your own house because people were partying. It's apples and oranges.
Yeah, I'm, by the way, reporting to you live from Ketch. This is what the
is that Ketch? I thought it was the Jersey Steakhouse that you like to go to for your birthday every year.
Although Rails doesn't look very different from this. And
that's
yes,
Ketch.
I do like to go there.
Ketch looks like it's potentially on a boat. There's a lot of cedar, it looks like, and
I mean, there's also
woods.
like a rooftop. Like it's a cool place, I guess, but like it's not like I understand why Bryn didn't want to go to Ketch. I understand why Sai didn't want to go to Ketch.
Yes.
But also that place is very crowded. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were also thinking like, why would we want to film an episode like in a really crowded restaurant? You know what I mean? Like it may have been one of those things. Maybe they didn't want to be there. But yes, there's a huge difference between not going to a dinner and then not even telling them that you're not going to, lying about it.
And posting it. It's like if Jenna lied about going to her house and said, oh, I got to go to work. And all of a sudden, like, look at my ocean views at my house and like on Instagram. And for Bryn to really try to kneel into that conversation at the end of this past week's episode, I was like, oh, this is so dumb. This is so dumb.
She's so dumb.
And she's probably fall all over her, and she's used to being able to like, yeah, what you say is right, and it's so fun because Jenna isn't even trying. Jenna's just like, oh, listen, I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I hope you understand. Like, because she's just, this is her normal feelings. She's not covering up for anything.
And also, Jenna wasn't wrong. Like. Her going home is not a big deal. And then Aaron's like, why didn't you just tell me to turn down the music? I'm like, Aaron, do you really think you would have received that well?
Exactly. And then you have the scene of being the person turning down the music. Wait, speaking of Cafe Cipriani and the cheese fight from the first episode, I was wondering, I'm like, you know, this is so specific. You know, it almost made me think, because I know they had that initial cast member, Lizzie, that they shot with.
Oh,
Do you think they shot the cheese stuff and the actual restaurant thing, but that was also with Lizzie, and that's why we don't see that and we just hear about it in that first episode?
Well, I think the cheese plate definitely was when Lizzie was there. And I think that when they keep saying like, oh, it's the time with the cheese plate, it's the time since we haven't seen each other since the cheese.
So it's like everybody was there for the cheese.
I think that night is when that conversation happened between Bryn and Lizzie that got Lizzie off the show.
And allegedly Lizzie's husband said the N-word in front of Bryn. Is that correct?
No. So Lizzie and Bryn were talking, and Bryn said, because Lizzie's a matchmaker. And so for like Jewish Orthodox, modern Orthodox matchmaker. And so Bryn said, I want you to set me up with a Jewish man. And Lizzie said, I don't oppose Jewish people and non-Jewish people dating, but that's not something I do because a lot of the Orthodox men that I set up want a Jewish wife, because in Judaism, your Jewishness comes from the woman. So they would want to be with a Jewish woman. And I think she said something along the lines of preserving your ethnicity or something like that, or to preserve your bloodline or something like that. And Bryn said that was really offensive. And to use words like preserving and bloodline and all that kind of stuff is like, Bryn is also a fucking moron. She said something like, those are words that like Nazis would use to talk about Jewish people, right? So that goes really poorly. Then Lizzie has an off-camera conversation with Bryn on the phone. And Bryn says, what I was trying to say is like, you're using certain words that are like really messed up. It's like me using the N-word, except when she said the N-word, Bryn, on the phone, she actually said the full N-word.
Bryn said the full N-word.
Bryn said the full N-word because Bryn is half black. And then Lizzie's husband gets on the phone with production because she's worried that Bryn is going to say something about the N-word and rope Lizzie into it. Bryn's husband, Lizzie's husband gets on phone with production and tells them what Bryn says. But when he tells them what Bryn says, he does not say N-word. He says the actual N-word. And so I think that's when production was like, oh, no, we're not doing this again.
Yeah, because we're already having that 5th season fight in the 1st season, potentially. Wow.
Exactly. In like the first 2 weeks. And also with the cheese plate of them being like, oh, that's weird. There's just cheese. I think it's because likely when Erin did the cheese plate, she probably didn't put meat on it, because when you're kosher, you don't mix meat and cheese, right? So if Lizzie was there, Erin probably just did meat or just did cheese. And then so for somebody to be like, oh, there's just cheese, that's weird. Like in a charcuterie board. I think it's all related to Lizzie. And I think they can't talk about it. And then so even that dinner with Catch, right, of like Erin and Sai not going to, or sorry, Bryn and Sai not going to Catch. I don't think it's about the actual restaurant. I think it was because Erin had already sided with Lizzie in that whole fight. And I think like Bryn and Sai just didn't want to be around Erin. And so I think that's what it was.
That's wow. I had that completely wrong. So I'm glad you filled us in.
By the way, none of this is fact. This is just me like Charlie Day with like the conspiracy theory board.
Yeah.
Just like putting the puzzle together. I think that's what really it is. But
I mean, and by the way, I do feel like I understand why, I guess this is, but it is everything comes out in the wash eventually. So it'll be interesting when this does become a bigger conversation. Wow. And Andy is a Jewish man too. I would be very interested in his take on this situation, or that's what, like, as I get deeper into these shows, I always want to know behind the scenes. Like I always want that documentary of how these shows are put together, these conversations of like the production of like, oh my God, I just got off the phone with Lizzie's husband. Holy shit. Like I want those. Anyways, I know, do you have 15 more minutes? I know you got a thing. This is going, I don't want this to end. I'm going to take this to OC really quickly, which I know you don't love, but it is such a trash. It's such for me, I'm really enjoying watching the season. It is complete trash. We are in complete agreement of, I do a character now every week of, howdy, ma'am. My name's Ryan. I'm Tamara's son. I got an accent over the couple years. I work at Hidden Valley Ranch, and I scroop all the ranch up, and I have, you guys have seen me go through a lot of changes, but I watched Yellowstone one season, and now it's my entire personality. Howdy do, ma'am. Like, what the, I mean, listen, Tamara, how does Tamara get away with all the shit she gets away with? Even in the end of this past week's episode, it's brought up of this off-mic moment or off-camera moment potentially between Shannon and John Jansen, and Tamara's like, I've heard it from Heather, but I'm keeping my mouth shut. And she's like, and Vicky's there. It's like, Vicky's there. Vicky's like, we want to know if we want. And first off, I'm just not in support of anybody keeping off anything. If you're on a fucking show, Shannon, I don't want any off mic. I don't want off camera moments. Like you are a professional. You shoot the show. But how does Tamara get away with this episode? Like she's magic. I hate her, but I love to hate people on these shows. But she's magic. She has a magical ability.
She's incredible. I mean, she keeps doing shitty things, and then she keeps being like, I was just in a really bad place in my life. And like,
they buy it. They're like, okay, that checks out.
Emily's like, you called me Shrek. And Tamara's like, yeah, but I was just in a really bad place. I didn't mean it. Like, I don't know.
That would never go away. Like I've read things about myself from other people. I'm like, that will never go away. And I will always, I will always remember. Like I will always remember. So
yes.
But I think it makes the show interesting. So it's just frustrating to watch.
I love OC this season. I think it's so funny. I think that because nobody has really made up their mind about who they're mad at. And the funniest to me in all of it is Emily and Gina, because last week at the end of that note, when Tamara ran off, because by the way, that's how we also know that Tamara for sure was telling Sue and Jen that Ryan is hot.
Tamara runs.
She ran off. Because she runs. When she's wrong, she runs, right? And then she runs, and the entire time Emily and Gina are like, Heather, you have a fake relationship with Tamara. Like, you need to comfort Tamara. And Heather's like, okay, I guess. And they really try to get on Heather about coming for Tamara. The very next episode, Emily and Tamara are together, and Emily's like, Heather's a shitty friend, Tamara. You should get Shannon to fight with her. Are you?
It's amazing because I want to scream every episode because I'm like, every time you think Tamara's locked into some sort of box, she doesn't even try to get out. She magically gets out of it. And these people have no memory. It's like they've just like Men in Black themselves where they have no memory. And Heather Dubrow does not see this coming because Heather's like, I am a working actor that have raised, as a woman, I am representative of all women going back into the workforce. And you don't like she has a Costco running out of her garage. She's like flying private jets to like her, she's flying off because her kid had a bad Thursday at college. Like all of this shit. She does not see this coming because she's like, oh, Tamara, I've got to be nicer because it's Tamara. She doesn't think of Emily and Gina as any form of threat at all. So she is not aware that this is now turning into a Heather Dubrow takedown season, and it's for nothing. There's not like Heather Dubrow has had other seasons where it would have been way better to take her down. This is for nothing.
Yeah, you guys are just mad at Heather for existing. And I'll be honest with you, they have always been trying to come for Fancy Pants because she is Fancy Pants. Like,
yes,
all it took was Heather saying that ridiculous thing she said in Montana about like, I liked shoveling shit so I could see how other people live.
But by the way, I knew what she was saying, but the fact that everybody, like, if you're going to hop on that, let's like bring up Ryan, Tamara's son, into the conversation. Like, I just love that we let these other things just completely slide. And then it's like bad improv when people are like, oh, is that the game in the improv scene? Let's all hop on this game. Yeah. They're all trying to find this storyline to hop onto, but it is just it's like weirdly magical that like Tamara even must go home from filming and go, these fucking idiots. Like how is it this easy to come back on this show? It should not be this easy.
And she does it all the time. She was on her podcast for weeks saying that she fucking hated Teresa Giudice. She hated her. She was on Watch What Happens Live saying she hated her. She was Team Melissa. She was commenting on things. And then like last time she was on Watch What Happens Live last week, she was like, I actually like Teresa.
See, that's what I'm saying. Oh God. Tamara's see,
and
it's like
what? That is actually, so you know what it is? What Tamara's doing is what you mentioned earlier, Drew is trying to do.
But Drew's so fumbly with it.
Because she doesn't know her own superpower yet. Tamara here is like 12 years deep. She is, it's like the difference between like Miss Marvel and Captain Marvel, right? Like it's like Miss Marvel's just figuring it out.
Yeah.
And Captain Marvel knows all the things. So it's like,
if I have to see Tamara's crusty emoji underwear any more time, like it's like just all the, and then Shannon Bedore, like Shannon Bedore is such a great character because Tamara's in there playing the housewives game. She has only allegiance to herself in the show. That's who she loves. She doesn't love any of these ladies. Stop calling like, oh, I thought we were best friends. No, you didn't. Shannon Bedore thought you were best friends because Shannon legitimately sometimes forgets cameras are like Shannon legitimately thinks these are real relationships. And that's so funny to watch because she's like, I'm going to keep my guard up. I know not to try. And then she's like, I love you, Tamara. Kiss me on the lips. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah. All it takes is like 2 tequila shots and a kiss on the lips. And like now they're doing cultural appropriation across bars in America as the Tres Amigas. Like it is.
Wait, dude. By the way, no, I mean, Shannon. She's also. I mean, she drinks on the show, but she's a drinker. She's like a drinker. I try to keep telling people like her and John Jansen, that's one of those couples that goes, should we start drinking at 3 p.m.? And they yeah, I get it's a Thursday. Why not? Like tomorrow's Friday. Like we should just do. They're one of those people you can tell, like I've seen these couples before that they just fucking drink and it's never a conversation. They just get shit-faced. We've had 2 stories that weren't even on the show in the last week and a half of Shannon yelling at John's daughter at a tiki bar in OC at last call. And then Shannon at a Morgan Wallen concert being a mess as well. I mean, like, I don't care about Scandival. Pick the fucking cameras back up for this.
I know. I love Shannon Bedore. Shannon Storms Bedore, or whatever way she says her name now, is incredible. She's a gift. I'm so glad we know her and we get to watch her. I think she's so funny. And I think she is so hilariously tragic. Like she can't have a real conversation with anyone. Like even that episode where she's like, like in a store with her kids, and her kids are like, we don't know if we want to get a college counselor, and she's like, what do you mean you don't want to? Like she pops off.
I'll
She
deal with this.
Yeah, I'll deal with this. Like John Jensen, whatever his
John Jansen
is like, he's like, so Tamara, Shannon, are you feeling relaxed? And she's like, how can I feel relaxed? I have this and I have that. And it's like, people just want to know how you're doing, man. Like, you got to relax.
I'm Shannon for Ship Station. I need to mail out
this salmon isn't going to get cream cheese in it by her itself. Okay. God. So like, I love her, but I think Tamara has, like, Shannon is so easy to play because Tamara says, essentially, here's the sequencing of things. Emily says, so Shannon allegedly at some point confided something with Heather. Heather mentions to Emily that she thinks that maybe things aren't as great with Shannon and John as Shannon is playing off. Emily tells Tamara this. Tamara says, oh, I know exactly what's going on between Shannon and John. Then she gets on camera, gets Shannon drunk, and then says to Shannon, Heather may have been talking about you. Ma'am, you have filmed 2 entire scenes.
Yeah,
talking about Shannon. And Shannon is like, I can't believe Heather would do that. What? Heather's not here. And I love that because, you know, Shannon is, again, like, it's exactly what you said. Tamara went home and was like, I can't believe I pulled that off.
Yeah, it's so easy. Like, Shannon takes the bait every time. And like, that's why I love her. But at the same time, it's so frustrating because us, the audience, are like, open your fucking eyes, everybody. And it's like, and as we start, we got to close up here. But like Gina and Emily, like Emily's finally like finding some sort of lane. Poor Gina is so ineffective in every capacity. And I was talking about this on Monday, and I know, you know, if you, I just like, oh, I'm going to talk about being triggered by Jen and Ryan because I've never, these relationships are so great, you know, like, and I'm like, Gina, I just like zone out when it's like scenes with her and her dude who seems like a really nice guy, and I'm so happy for them. But like, it's just Gina, poor Gina. And they must have told her, like, you got to amp it up somehow. And she took that to mean like makeup and her talking heads. She's like, I'm amping it up. I'm so much orange.
She looks like the Pan's Labyrinth with like her eyelashes. She looks crazy.
If you look directly into her talking heads, you'll have a like, it's like, oh my God, it's like a strobe light effect. It's like so bright.
Yeah, I think Gina is unfortunately sad in a way that is not enjoyable, like Shannon.
Well, it's sad in a way that I am. It's sad in a way of like,
it's too real.
It's like, I was like, yeah, man, like, I don't even have kids, but like in my head, I'm trying to put kids to college eventually. I'm trying to like do, you know, it's like real shit. Like, I don't know legitimate, like I'm doing well now, but I don't know how I'm going to be doing next year. Like, that's the shit I worry about when I see Gina. It's nothing of the stuff she talked about. Yeah.
I'm worried about her utility bills being paid on time. Like, that's what I'm worried about with Gina. I'm worried about Gina's lights being shut off. Gina also, like, Gina makes me sad because in the like just like I don't want to see Ryan, I don't want to see Gina's ex-husband on camera. I don't want to see you playing blended family. We know way too much about this man. And she keeps being like, that one incidence of our domestic violence. I'm like, yeah, I don't think that you get
to think about when you're friends with people that you don't like their significant other, or you know way too much about their relationship. And it's always hard to ever get back on that page with that person because you know how they hurt your friend. And then we're doing that on TV and you're just like, oh man, I'm happy for you and your kids if that's, but I don't need to see it because it's not going to ever go back to like me thinking anything good about this man.
Also, yeah, absolutely. But also, especially because she keeps saying that she's so triggered by Double N Jen of Jen's affair, but you're still hanging out with what's his name, Matt. I think so. I said this on my podcast, but I really think that Gina is somebody who, like, you know, she keeps having these scenes with Travis where she's like, I love my new life. And she's like in tears. She's like, I don't miss any of it. I'm like, yes, you do. Gina wishes if she could turn back time and she could still be with this man, Matt, she would, because she is like, she was with Matt before. And the reason why that marriage ended is because he left her for another woman. He was having an active affair with another woman and everybody found out. And then he told her he didn't want to be with her anymore. She didn't leave him. He left her, and then all this other stuff happened, but like now, even with like her building this blended family, she's not actually addressing any of the issues that she has with Matt. She's just like doing as much as she can to make things good for the kids, right? Like she was even with Matt before, even though he was a piece of shit, because it was good for the kids. And I think Gina is somebody who would rather live in blissful ignorance because she wants to do the easy thing. That's why she boils pasta and pours ragu sauce on it instead of making her own, because she wants to do the easy thing. So like she wants, if she could be with Matt still, she 1000% would be with Matt. Poor Travis. Like but also Travis, like there's also stuff about them in the news all the time. And I'm like, we're not even talking about that. Like there's been stuff between Gina and Travis that came out.
What stuff came out about Gina and Travis?
There was, okay, so Travis is...
Shit, you got to leave in 3 minutes. Fuck, I know. I'm like, what do you got to leave? Gina,
I'll tell you. Okay, so there was a story a couple of months ago, maybe last year, while they were still filming or right before they started filming, that Travis's ex-wife said that there was like a 911 call made by like Travis's daughter about a domestic violence situation between Gina and Travis, where Gina was being violent towards Travis. And so like,
maybe they were talking about her makeup. Maybe it was like violent makeup. Like it was like her talking head makeup. Oh,
who knows? Who knows? But like Gina is pretending like everything is fine, but Gina is not good at pretending like everything is fine. And she's misdirecting her anger at the wrong people. She was mad at Double and Jen, that she got over that. And now she's inexplicably mad at Heather, like for no reason at all. So
we didn't even get a fucking talking about Jen and Ryan, who I think Jen is actually an interesting, because she's
awesome.
She's seen Tamara for what she is, and I always love that person that's like, wait, what's going on? Like she's like getting rocked, and I think it's hysterical. And also we know this guy's a douchebag, but I still like Jen. She's a good addition, I think.
I think she's awesome. And this guy looks like Ronnie from Watch of Crappens says that he has Paul Nassif face, and now I can't unsee it. But he is, you could tell he's the biggest douchebag. But if she wants to be with this douchebag, because he like, you know, I saw
Ronnie with like stubble the other day, and I was like, if we put a wig on him, he would look a little bit like Ryan now. He's gonna start sending flaccid dick pics to everybody.
By accident.
Okay, you gotta. This has been fabulous. This has been fantastic. It's exactly what I needed. So I hope you guys love this as much as I do. Go subscribe to the Reality Is podcast with Noor. 2 to 3 episodes a week. She really does break down these shows. And I got to apologize. I just realized you said this earlier. You were like, Carlos King was screaming the whole. I screamed this whole time, but I was excited. I was very excited. So I get really like vocal.
Ryan Bailey.
So I want to apologize. I realized, like, because I just get so excited and amped talking about this stuff. So I apologize if your hearing has been hurt, you guys.
No.
But
Thank you.
Is there anything else coming up that we can support you with?
No, just my podcast. That's it.
Okay. You guys go subscribe, get it 5 stars. I mean, I'm telling you, add this to your weekly rotation. It is well worth it. And please, this got to be regular. This was so fun. Thank you so much.
This was awesome. Thanks for having me, Ryan.